Hey guys, my name is Blue Inc, and welcome to the BluGreen Incorporated Zoo. So this is the pilot episode, and naturally I'm going to be building the entrance to the zoo. I figured it's the first episode, why not do the entrance? So, first thing I'm doing is I'm trying to make a centerpiece to be a focal point for people who are just entering the zoo. Now my original idea was to use the elephant statues that are already in the game, but after testing them out, I realized that they don't really fit. And then I saw the stag statues that are in the game, and their posture and the way that they stand, they have such a grand feeling, and I really love the way that they look, so I decided to use them instead. Now, I wanted this, between them to be some sort of water feature, and the fountains that are in the game, they're just too big, and I really couldn't figure out any way to make them look good because the color of them, the way that they sit, they just didn't work. So I decided to use these New World theme planters, and their geometrical shape is just perfect, and I love the way that they sit. It gives kind of a modern feeling, and they sit so nicely into the environment. So I made a custom fountain using these New World planters, and I think it turned out really well. Then I just framed the centerpiece with these East Asia support beams, and ultimately I think that this works as a great focal point, and I'm really happy with the way it turned out. So right around this point I started trying to put in a curb for the path to kind of separate it from the centerpiece, and I really wanted to use the wooden planks, but the issue with the wooden planks is there's not really enough smaller options to use. So what I decided on doing is, again, using the East Asia support beams and setting them on their end and sinking them into the ground, and kind of using them to make it look like these little stones or bricks had been set up to separate the path from the centerpiece to keep this, to keep people out and don't step in there, of course. And I think it turned out really well. This is a method that I've used before in building some of my zoos, and I am really happy with the way it turned out. Now, I must admit that I am brand new to the Planet Zoo, or to the Planet franchise, and I never played Planet Coaster. I don't even own Planet Coaster, honestly, and I'm brand new to this building system and all these things, and at first it can be really overwhelming. But I really enjoy it, and I think it's really fun. Honestly, this is the building that I was expecting from The Sims, and it really scratches that itch for wanting to do something truly creative. So I took the fountain piece that I made for the centerpiece, and I repeated it on either side of the centerpiece to make these bigger fountains that kind of frame the centerpiece a little bit more and give it a place where it fits and where it works. And I also repeated that geometric, was it a hexagon? I repeated the hexagon shape, again, using the East Asia support beams, and I think it turned out really well. I think it's a shape that I'm going to want to repeat in the future, and I'm really happy with the way that it looks. And honestly, I'm not generally that into the modern look of things. I don't really like the straight lines and all the white and things like that, but the way this turned out, I really like it. So, the next thing I start adding is the foliage, and to be honest, foliage is something that I really struggle with. Personally, I live in a place where a lot of foliage that grows in North America will not grow because of the climate and various other reasons. So I don't know what a lot of these plants look like in real life. I assume they look like the way they look in the game, considering it's been praised for being so realistic. But I don't know in what settings they'll grow, or where you can find them, or what they look like naturally, like how they grow. So I'm just making these to look nice. I am not trying to be realistic with the zoo. It's purely aesthetic. That's my sole, or my only goal with this is to make it look nice. I really tried with the carpet moss to make it look like it's covering the ground the way carpet moss does, but the issue with carpet moss in this game is it's super bumpy, and so whenever you put it into large groups together like that, it just looks really bad. So I gave up, and I ended up putting some cypress trees in there instead. Now, I tend to spend a lot of time using the terrain paints in this game to make it look good, but I think it's worth it. I think it's worth the effort. Now, right here, I am putting together the information center. I end up giving it a sign that says gift shop, but I think I will probably end up changing it to say information or info center or something like that in the future, because it's supposed to be an information center. And really, that's kind of the first place people go when they enter a zoo, right? They wanna see what's in the zoo. They want to grab their little maps and stuff. Maybe get one of those little sound track things. What are they? It's like a Walkman, but it has a pre-recorded message on it that you listen to, or you punch in the number when you go to the different exhibits, and it'll tell you about the animal. Those are fun. I like those. We don't actually have those at the zoo where I live. We don't have a lot at the zoo where I live. The zoo where I live is kind of horrible. It's not a good zoo. Oh well. So, well, because it's kind of a lame zoo, I don't really know what a lot of zoos look like, so I am using a lot of reference images for this, and I actually did use a reference for this part of the zoo itself. It's a picture of, I think, let me pull up the image right here. It is from the Lincoln Park Zoo. I think it's the entrance to the zoo. I'm not actually sure. I've never been to Lincoln Park Zoo, but here I'll put a picture of it up on the screen, a picture of the reference that I used. And as you can see in the reference, it has like these metal arbor type things, and I really like the way that they look, so I tried to replicate them using wooden beams instead, because I want it to look more organic, I guess you could say. Not super industrial, not super modern, maybe a little bit modern, but not too much. And so I did my best to recreate the arbor using beams, and I think it turned out rather well. Honestly, it was a little bit of a struggle because the way I lined them up wasn't completely even, so I did end up that did end up biting me in the future, but other than that, I believe it turned out really well, and I'm genuinely proud of it. And I think the feeling that you get as you go under it is really nice. The shade, the shadows that it gives off, the shadows in this game are amazing. Like, you can see even here when I'm just starting to build the arbor, they are like perfect shadows of what it would be in real life. So right here, as I move these beams over, I did not distribute them evenly, and that ends up hurting me in the future. So if you're going to do something like that, make sure the beams are distributed evenly, especially if you're going to recreate something like it on the other side. So here at this point, I am building what I end up calling the snake house. It's kind of, I wanted to do kind of a reptile house, greenhousey kind of thing, but there's too many reptiles for it to fit in this building, and not, well, it's too many reptiles to fit in this building, so I decided to put just snakes in it. Now, snakes are not like the most cuddly creatures. You don't really want to introduce people to snakes as soon as they walk into a zoo, but I think it works rather well, honestly. I don't put the snakes into the exhibits in the speed build, because I actually forgot until I was recording the end clips, and then I realized I needed to put snakes in there. But it has one of every kind of snake. I think there's a double of one of the snakes, because actually no, I think it's just one of every snake. Some of the exhibits might have more than one snake in them, but it is what it is. So I decided to add these wooden beams to the frames of the windows, because I think it gives them a much better setting, and the way they are, I think, is just a little bit too minimalistic. I like giving them frames like this, and it makes it look more like a greenhouse, even though there's not really any plants inside this greenhouse. It's just a nice building to look at. But giving it these borders gives it a much cleaner look and makes it look a lot more finished, I think. It gives it a more classical look, in my opinion, at least. So yeah, here I'm just finishing up these the borders, and then I add in the roof. I wasn't really quite sure what to do about the roof, especially since there's these dividers here, so I just put white bits over the parts where you wouldn't be able to see in anyway. And so the reason I did this before finishing the arbor is because in the reference image, as you probably noticed, the arbor sits on top of the buildings. So I wanted to make sure the arbor fit around where the buildings were. And I think I did that rather well. So, truth be told, I didn't actually know it was called an arbor when I built it. I had to look it up and figure it out because I am not very architecturally savvy, despite what people might think. So yeah, I'm just adding in some of the beams. This is where I started to kind of get hurt by the fact that I hadn't properly lined it up. And you might notice that, see how they're not lining up very well? Yeah, that's my fault. I ended up deleting a bunch of them so that they did fit properly. Despite that having been an issue, I think it turned out rather well, and like I said, I am proud of the way it turned out. So I think it's around this point that I started adding in more of the landscaping to the outside of the buildings to kind of make them look like they fit a bit more in their settings. Now, the information building doesn't look finished. It looks very boxy in it, and I know that's an issue a lot of people have had with building in Planet Zoo, is that their buildings look very boxy, and I think I'm going to try working off the grid in the future to make my buildings look a lot less boxy. But for this building in particular, I'm going to come back to it, and I'm going to add some more of those plank details to the outside, just to make it look like it belongs and make it look like it's actually finished. I actually had to add this little rim to the outside of the snake house building because I realized if I put mulch into the landscaping area, it was just gonna push up against the glass and not look very good. So I added that border to the bottom, and I think it makes it look better. It makes it look more framed. It actually looks kind of like, they look like plantation house windows in my opinion. And I kind of like that look. And I used the New World signs here. I messed around with the fonts a little bit, but I think the way I put the signs together actually turned out really nicely, and I like the aesthetic that it gives. They look like, I don't know, I just like the way that they look. I like the shiny metal, I don't know. But, yes, there I gave it the name The Gift Shop, but I think I will turn it to Info Center at some point in the future. Maybe. Hopefully I remember to do that. I probably won't, but hopefully I do. Anyway, I'm kind of recording these prior, like at this point I've already recorded like the 3rd or 4th episode, I think. Just because there's so many ideas swimming around in my head and I'm so inspired to continue building. But I hope you guys really enjoyed watching me build this and will watch my videos in the future. So if you did like it, please leave a like on the video and maybe consider subscribing. I'm not sure if I probably won't be on a consistent schedule just because I am in college, but hopefully I'll be able to put enough of these out to where it's worth subscribing to my channel. Thank you guys for all the support you've given me on starting this series, and I hope to see you in the near future.